Today on What Now, two stories shaping the headlines across Africa and beyond. In South Asia, Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to a temporary 48-hour ceasefire, halting days of deadly cross-border clashes. The truce follows the worst violence on the frontier since the Taliban's return to power in 2021. And in East Africa, Kenya is mourning the death of opposition leader Raila Odinga, the veteran politician who spent decades fighting for democracy and equality. Two nations, two defining moments, from the fragile ceasefire on the Afghan frontier to the passing of a political giant in Kenya, the stories and their impact. This is What Now. I am Precious Amayo. Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to a temporary 48-hour ceasefire as following days of escalating border clashes that left more than a dozen civilians dead and over 100 others wounded. The renewed fighting along the volatile frontier shattered a fragile peace between the two neighbors, the worst violence since the Taliban's takeover of Kabul in 2021. Now, tensions fled after Islamabad accused the Afghan Taliban of allowing militants to operate from Afghan territory and carrying out attacks inside Pakistan. The Taliban rejected the claims, accusing Pakistan's military of spreading misinformation and violating Afghan sovereignty. Now, before the truce took effect, Pakistani airstrikes hit targets in Kandahar province, including the border town of Spain Boldak. Afghan officials said residential areas were struck, while Pakistan insisted it was targeting Taliban forces. Emergency hospitals in Kabul said they treated dozens of wounded, including women and children, with injuries from explosions and shrapnel. Now, both sides also accused each other of launching ground assaults, while several border crossings were closed, disrupting trade and leaving goods trucks stranded. The international community has voiced concern, with China urging protection for its citizens, Russia calling for restraint, and the United States offering to help mediate.
Military of ramped up tensions between the South Asian neighbors. The UN says the renewed conflict has killed at least 18 and left hundreds wounded. A Pakistani foreign ministry statement. Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed to a temporary ceasefire on Wednesday after airstrikes and ground fighting ramped up tensions between the South Asian neighbors.
Where once allies are now turned sworn enemies. I just want to get your reaction to the latest clashes and how you think that could shape relations between both countries going forward.
You see, the Pakistan-Afghanistan crisis is not something that started yesterday. This is something that dates back to as far as 1947. And it's primarily because of the 2,600 kilometer border known as the Durand Line. So it's a complex historical, ethnic, and geopolitical rivalry that's lingered over too many decades. So for me, I think the renewed crisis with counter blames like the Taliban is shielding the Tehrik Taliban of Pakistan, the insurgent group, wreaking havoc in Pakistan, and with Afghanistan on the other hand saying Pakistan is invading their sovereignty. I think anytime you're looking at a crisis at any level, you can always look at both the remote cause of the problem and the immediate. So the immediate cause right now, based on that, mind you, there's a lingering or crisis of the issues relating to the border. But I think what we see now, the truce, the 48 hours ceasefire, is a welcome development. But that will not help to resolve the issues because these issues have lingered over the years. So, and the fact that Pakistan is saying, based on credible intelligence, that these TTP insurgents, they are harbored somewhere in Kandahar, which is in Afghanistan, and the Taliban are saying it's not true, and they don't. I think if those issues, that have been raised, they are not resolved within this 48-hour ceasefire, I think what we have is just going to be a beginning of an escalating
Dr.
war
Keme,
that's claimed the lives of so many people over the years.
And we see how both sides are not just only fighting for the upper hand on the border, but they're also trying to control the narrative. Do they have the goodwill? Because Pakistan has been accused for years by both the US and India of harboring terrorists as well, who attack both countries. And now Pakistan is also accusing Afghanistan or the Taliban of doing that. And the Taliban are the one who took over after years of insurgency. Do any of the sides have the public goodwill to sort of draw in the sympathy that they so badly want to draw in at the moment?
If you look at the fight against insurgency or the fight against terrorists globally, you'll find that Afghanistan and even Pakistan, they've always been in the news as countries that are harboring terrorist groups. So in this case, I don't think both countries can be absorbed out of this whole issue. So when you talk about the goodwill and issues related to that, I don't think both of them stand any chance of being absorbed from the crisis itself, especially when it comes to issue relating to terrorism, because the Taliban over the years have been accused, or have been accused or perceived to be sponsoring or sympathetic to terrorist cause. The same thing, we have some groups, some elements in Pakistan, who are also have over the years been accused. Even if the Pakistani government or government on both sides have denied all of this openly, but we know, but we've seen, there are evidences to prove that both sides have some groups on both sides are sympathetic to the cause of terrorism. So when you talk about that, I don't think we can really absorb any of these countries. But for the interest of civilians that are affected directly, especially from the what we see in the hospitals and all of that, in the interest of the civilians that are dying, and interest of the interborder trade and all of that, I think all of these issues we have to find the common ground. The international community need to do a lot within these 48 hours to ensure that these things don't escalate.
And that's the thing, Dr. Keme. This is a 48-hour truce, which means that it's a temporary ceasefire. Pakistan has more firepower than the Taliban. But you look at, in terms of experience, the Taliban has more experience when it comes to fighting because of their decades of insurgency. If this truce doesn't go beyond 48 hours and this becomes an all-out war or conflict, what would be the implication, not just for both countries, but just the region?
Yes. So far, we've seen China, Iran, and Qatar trying to intervene in this. Now, let me take China, the implication it will have for China, because China's own interest, strategic interest in the conflict is due to the Belt and Road Initiative. And this, and will help to seek stability along the China-Pakistan economic corridor, route that connects, the region. And, the Belt and Road Initiative is so important to China. So if a truce after the 48 hours ceasefire, if nothing is done, you can see, for instance, China will greatly be affected. So this is one part of a large implication, and this will have. And if China is affected in terms of the Belt and Road Initiative, so you can imagine the effect, the spillover effect it will have on countries who are partners with China under the Belt and Road Initiative, including Nigeria, you see, including Pakistan and the rest of them. So we just hope that within this 48-hour ceasefire that we have, a lot will come out of it positively. Otherwise, it will have, serious implication on countries who have interest as long as the
and Dr. Keme, apologies, I keep butting in. I have a few minutes left. I just want to use it efficiently. In terms of countries that have interest, there was a visit by Afghan Taliban foreign minister to Delhi. That was just before the current conflict. Do you sense that, for India, this is the principle? There is a principle of the enemy of my enemy is my friend playing out here. And what would it mean if India was to have a role or play a role in this conflict?
Yes, the international relations have gone to a level that those days we used to have the enemy of my enemy is my enemy. But sometimes what informs these decisions is based on their foreign policy. So, and if India sees that, okay, they cannot take a stand on my enemy's enemy is my enemy, because first of all, India will first of all try to look at what do I stand to gain in terms of all of this. The same thing China is doing, the same thing Qatar is doing. So this, whether there's a meeting between the foreign ministers, all of them, what will determine the final stand of India on this conflict is what do they stand to gain or what do they stand to lose? Okay, well, based on their foreign policy objectives. So I don't see India taking a definite stand on this issue. They might want to appear to to take a stand, but I think at the end of the day, we might see some form of movement and align with other countries to find a lasting peace. And just to put it in, just a few this thing. Now, the peace that we will see after this 48 hours will be dependent on mutual cooperation and sovereignty and border, the sovereignty and border. And then there's going to be cooperative counterterrorism measures between both countries if all of this is not done. And it's not to forget that in Pakistan, we have close to over 1.4 registered refugees, Afghan refugees in Pakistan. So when for us to have peace after these 48 hours, there have to be a good level of humanitarian management, of refugees, and between these two conflicts. And as much as possible, based on the question you just asked, I think there have to be a good reduction or reducing influence by external powers. That way, it will help to get peace on time between both countries.
Well, there's been a call for President Trump to step in. We'll see how that plays out. Thank you so much for your time, as always. Always a pleasure to have you on. Doctoral researcher, Dr. Joel Kemie.
Thank you so much for having me.